Small cap companies are among the New Zealand stocks favored by our next guest. His Kiwi Pacific Fund outperformed the MSCI World and Benchmark Kiwi Index last year. Bill Buechler is the President and Chief Investment Officer of Buechler Capital Asset Management. He joins me from Sydney. Hey, good morning. What's the case for investing in New Zealand stocks right now?
Well, good morning. I think the biggest case for the future in New Zealand is the development of the oil and the oil story. I'm on my way to a New Zealand oil conference, the 2008 Petroleum Conference, and I'm expecting to see a lot of enthusiasm for the future, quite different to the conference 2 years ago in 2006, which was pretty much filled with doom and gloom and pessimism. There's a lot of hope for what's happening in New Zealand. It's quite an investment story.
So what kind of oil stocks do you like? Any names?
Well, yes, I'll share a few with you. Primarily, the oil fields in New Zealand are being developed by some of the Australian companies. And the importance of the Tui oil field, which has been developed by a company called AWE, or Australian Worldwide Exploration, here in this country, is that, for example, it came online about 6 months ago, and the oil production produced enough cash flow to equal the equivalent of 8,000 of the dairy farmers in New Zealand. So if you know the dairy farmer story and the milk story and the dividends that are flowing from that, it's quite an impact in New Zealand.
Now, we just flashed your fund allocation. 20% of your fund is allocated to energy. Given your optimism in energy and oil-related stocks, are you intending to perhaps increase that allocation?
I think so. I think if we take a step back and look at New Zealand, there's always been a little bit of oil there in the Maui field, and now they're developing the Taranaki Basin. But New Zealand as a country is surrounded by a number of these petroleum basins. Right now, for example, at the southern part of New Zealand is a basin called the Great South Basin, which was originally worked for discovery by the Hunt brothers. But if we look at it now, there's active seismic boat activity from both ExxonMobil and OMV, the great European oil and exploration company. So that's something that's in development. Taranaki is already happening and producing oil. And there was a news article recently released by the government that shows there's a potentially tremendous find for oil off the Racumra Basin. Again, all three of these have potential to develop into what we might call giant oil fields. The article mentioned the fact that all of New Zealand might produce 10 times the amount of oil that's expected out of Taranaki. And if that's the case, we could have a country right across the Tasman from here in Australia that could be producing somewhere down the line close to 1 million barrels of oil on a daily basis. That's huge.
Now, you're tracking oil very closely. What assumptions are you making about where oil prices are heading?
Well, that's a great question. We're at the 102, 103 level, and it seems to me as long as we have the demand coming from the developing countries such as India and China and Brazil and such, that I expect oil prices to hold at these levels and probably move forward. There's a lot of talk about the fact that we've hit the peak oil, and from now on, we may not find as many big discoveries as we have in the past. Most of the oil that we're getting are coming from discoveries that were made 40 years ago. So I suspect that the price of oil will hold and maybe move higher. And if that's the case, and you look at some of the companies that are in this part of the world that are doing the oil and exploration, then I think you have to be very excited about the possibilities of where this is going to go. I believe that somewhere down the line, in the not too distant future, people are going to look at the Australia, New Zealand area as one of the premier oil development areas in the world, actually.
Now, William, you're betting on Kiwi stocks, but some investors are saying that there is better value outside New Zealand. I mean, stocks in Asia, excluding Japan, outperformed New Zealand shares last year. And so far this year, many of the region's markets have fallen. What's your take on that?
You know, it's an interesting part of the psyche, investment psyche in New Zealand, that they're always looking outside their country for the investment opportunities. But I think that there are some fabulous companies based in New Zealand that do work and do business on a global basis that are incredibly undervalued. When we look at the dividend yield, for example, of some of these companies, which I would consider growth companies, in the 8 and 9% dividend yield, and then we compare them to what the rest of the world is giving as yields. For example, the S&P 500 in the United States at less than 2%, where we can have dividends yields at 8 to 9%. It seems to me that New Zealand is drastically undervalued, if nothing else, on a dividend yield basis. I think that's a great place to be looking at for investment opportunities.
All right, William Buechler joining us from Sydney. Thanks for joining us this morning.